All the way back in the 2000s when I was in my 20s. Let me restart that. Hang on. All the way back in the 2000s, when I was in my 20s, I am very old. I started working for Viper Comics. Viper Comics had a couple, I guess, surprise hit comics for the independent comic world. Back then, they had something called Dead at 17, which was sort of like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer type comic. They had, various things that sort of were more or less kind of popular with, like, Wizard Magazine and, different comic book news sources back in the day. And, yeah, they had sort of, like, middling success and were, relatively big in the independent comics field. Back then, I contacted the guy who owned Viper Comics, Jesse Garza, and eventually I got to work as, like, marketing director for the company. Now, don't let that sound too important or too impressive. Basically, as marketing director, quote unquote, I just made, like, ad banners for, like, the ads they wanted to do, and, laid out different things. Like, it basically was a graphic design position, but with a fun title. Now, Viper Comics started out with sort of more of a horror bend to it. That's what first drew me to the company, was they published horror comics. Like I said, Dead at 17, different horror titles that, were either hit or miss, mostly misses, but, scary stuff, and I always liked scary stuff. Unfortunately, as time went on, there was a very sudden, swift, unexpected, and unannounced twist, where Viper Comics turned pretty much entirely to children's comics.
Oh, good morning, friends. David Chicken here to tell you about my brand new free ebook, David Chicken Goes to the Dentist. It's loaded with fun artwork and tells the story of how I was so afraid to go to the dentist that I climbed up into a tree to hide.
Yeah, so Viper Comics took a very hard turn and published like 4 or 5 different children's comics that were for very, very young children. So they went from horror to preschool comics within like the blink of an eye. And this essentially killed the company. Essentially what happened was the owner of the company, Jesse Garza, he had a kid and started wanting to make comics for his kid and for kids. And that's entirely understandable. Like, you'll see actors who appear in movies, and what else do actors do? I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But yeah, they appear in certain types of movies, but then they have a kid and they start doing more children's films. And it's like, oh, they had a kid, they kind of, wanted to do things more geared toward their new lifestyle as a parent. But unfortunately, Viper Comics, with its evil snake logo hissing in your face, it was a horror publisher, and switching entirely to children's comics and never turning back. They made a comic, I think, that was called Goobies, and like the sun versus the moon, where it was the sun and the moon having a fight. But the damage was done. The company that was known for horror had gone soft, quote unquote, and there was no turning back at that point. And you could say we've got Five Senses available now. Five Senses was a horror comic. And then you've got, more recently, Kung Fu Bean. Yeah. So you can see the issue. Hissing snake all up in your face, evil-looking snake with its teeth bared, Viper Comics on an issue of Kung Fu Bean. So it did not gel, and it did not work out, unfortunately. And, I'm trying to be amicable here and be nice about it, but the fact is that there was some stuff I wasn't ever paid for that I did work for these guys, so I shouldn't be that nice about it. But yeah, the hard turn into children's comics really fucked the company. For anybody wondering, Jesse is also the guy who never paid me for the Grave Bandits logo for that movie, if you've seen that other video of mine. Here's the original logo they were working with before they took mine. That brings us to the point of this video, which is the Nosferatu graphic novel, which I wrote for Viper Comics. Essentially, it's very hard to get an original idea looked at by a publisher, So what I went with was Nosferatu, a retelling of the 1920s film, because anything with an inbuilt audience usually will get more attention from a publisher. So I thought to myself, why not reinvent Nosferatu as like a modern day story? And this was back in 2010. So, you know, modern day, quote unquote. So let's just take a look at this and see what I'm talking about here. I didn't make this video, by the way. Yes, an exciting image of a castle. An exciting still image of a castle. Let's move on here. Can we show something interesting that will get people to buy the comic, please? Ooh. Here we go. I guess I could go back. I could do like as if I'm reacting on a live stream. I could pause the video. So Thomas Hutter was the protagonist, I guess. Nosferatu was a 1920s film that was a ripoff of the book Dracula. They didn't have the rights for Dracula, so they just renamed it Nosferatu, renamed the characters. So Thomas Hutter was the main character of that. Now, in this, I guess, is the term gender bent, or is that like a... Is that a slur now? I don't know. I don't know what things are right to say and not right to say anymore. But, so the character's gender bent for Tommy Hutter. And what we've got is we've got two female protagonists. That's right. We've got two characters in a same-sex relationship as the main characters. In 2010. Slimebeast! What a groundbreaking decision. Thank you. But Tommy Hutter is a photographer who is sent to Nosferatu's castle to photograph it for like an art exhibit. I wanted to do something different from Real Estate Agent, which was the original, reason. And the best thing I could think of was, why would you go to another country, to a specific castle, if you're not a real estate agent? And I thought, well, imagery, I don't know. But yeah, so she's a photographer who works for a gallery, or, has her work sold at a gallery, which is right across the street from where she lives. And yeah, that's our main character. Typical 2010 scene girl look. And it's interesting, the artist on this was My Dying Rose, if you Google him, if you look him up on DeviantArt. Very good artwork, very good stuff he came up with. He actually designed the characters. Alright, so we've got Elle, who is the stand-in for Ellen, I think was the name in Nosferatu. And as you can see, she's got like a website up here, which looks like a nondescript website, not really anything in particular. It has a title, which is her name, and then it has photos on it. Not really a layout that resembles any real-world site, but it sort of is like intended to be almost like a Suicide Girls-ish kind of site, because I really wanted to go with the idea of you've got this photographer as the main character. Who is her girlfriend? Well, her girlfriend is a model. Obvious. Like, you can point A to point B on that. Very simple, very easy. Kind of lazy, actually, as a decision. But yeah, so you've got the photographer, and you've got the model, and essentially the way they make their money is Tommy, does the photography, Elle does the modeling. Then we've got Knox. Knox, I believe the name was Mr. Knock in the 1920s film, but Knox is the gallery owner across the street instead of a real estate mogul, and he is sort of a stand-in for basically every trope you can think of about a guy in power abusing his position of power over women. And this is a guy who hits on the main character very brazenly, very openly, very shamelessly, and gets away with it because he has a lot of her revenue and stability and income tied up in his little hands. He's got like control over a lot of shit. Never anything where it would be like, why is this person still working for this guy? I can't believe that this person would work for this guy. It's totally unbelievable. It's just somebody who says inappropriate shit and is a bit of a creep. But yeah, so that's our Renfield type character is Knox. All right, then we've got Bullner, Agent Bullner. There was, in the Nosferatu film, there was Bulwer, I believe was his name, and he was like a college professor. But throughout the film, there are various characters who are like one-off characters that don't really have any impact. Like you'll have the college professor, Bulwer, and then you'll have a police officer who says one line later on, and then you'll have somebody who discovers the crew of a ship dead, and that's just the character that's like not anything. So I'd made all of those characters into one guy. Bullner, he's the cop. He's the guy who, discovers the dead people. He's the guy who is at this every step of the way, as he tries to track down what's going on. So basically, he's like a catch-all character for all of these, like, sort of one-note side characters that maybe got, like, one line or something throughout the film. God, why is this video so zoomed in on the fucking artwork? Oh my god. Orlok! Not the best picture of him, but Count Orlok, Nosferatu. I wanted to go, like, when I was talking with the artist about this, I wanted him to have sort of more like a, I wanted him to look more like somebody you might see at, like, a German nightclub. Like, I wanted him to have, like, the leather trench coat and, sort of like an aesthetic that was more modern. I don't know how much it came across in the final version, but, I essentially wanted him to look like, sort of like an edgelord. And, I think he does sort of look like an edgelord. But, as much as he can while still looking like, Nosferatu in general. But yeah. Nosferatu. Look at that horrible logo. Why is that? That is not the... That is not the logo. Alright. What are we doing? We're just zooming around. Okay. Alright. That's not bad. That's not bad. That's what the entire trailer should have been. Alright, and then we have the cover for the book, which is by Tim Seeley. Tim Seeley is the dude who created Hack Slash. Hack Slash is another horror comic, not from Viper Comics, but similar style, similar origins, similar indie comic thing back in the day. Hack Slash is a comic where two main characters fight monsters, Buffy the Vampire Slayer style, just going around getting, killing serial killers across the country, across the world, whatever. So yeah, I was actually hoping for more Nosferatu on the Nosferatu cover, but we did get the two main characters front and center, sort of like a pin-up style thing, I guess. But yeah, that's how it all shook out, and for better or worse, that's what it was. Is this going to end now? Is this going to drop? Just going to end. Okay, yeah, it just ends. Alright, well, so that's the trailer for Nosferatu. Now, courtesy of the Wayback Machine, you can see bookofvampires.com. Bookofvampires.com was the website I put together for Nosferatu. Very simplistic, very simple. But there were a couple websites in the comic book that were mentioned, or shown, in the imagery. And I actually made those websites, sort of almost like in an ARG style, where if you bought the comic and you saw a website in the comic, you could go to it and you could find, that it was actually a real website, which was, to me at the time, I thought that was a pretty cool idea. But, yeah, Nosferatu did not sell very well. We did like 90-plus pages, and we got paid nothing. There was no payment for this whatsoever. Me, the artist, the colorist, we made absolutely nothing off of this, never got paid. Essentially, what happened was the books shipped, and the books had a printer error in them. And the printer had fucked up every single copy of the book, to the point where you could not morally sell them. Now, Viper Comics sold them. I couldn't morally sell them. I couldn't promote the book, because it's like you're selling garbage. But yeah, there was a printer error where every single page was ruined. And yeah, the whole thing just kind of went down in flames. When I talked to Jesse from Viper Comics, I was like, what are we doing about the fact that they ruined all these copies? And I'm thinking to myself, they have to replace the copies. They have to replace what they, fucked up so we can actually sell this book. And Jesse got back to me and he said, don't worry, they gave me 50% off the publishing price. And I'm like, I don't care if they gave you a break on the price. I cannot sell these books. I can't morally sell garbage. This book is fucked up on every page. Never was fixed, nothing ever happened with it, we made nothing. Beyond that, I also, during production, had to essentially fight Viper Comics. I had to fight on two fronts, actually. Because Viper Comics, Jesse was like, can't you make the two main characters sisters? Do they have to be a lesbian couple? Can't they be sisters so there's no problem? To which I was like, no, that's the whole point, is that we're modernizing the old-timey 1920s story, and we're modernizing it with LGBTQ plus representation. Now, back in 2010 when I did this, the term LGBTQ plus representation wasn't really a thing, but that, essentially the same type of premise. I'm like, no, this comic stars two female characters who are in a relationship. Viper was like, well, maybe they could be sisters. What if they're just friends? Couldn't they just be roommates? I'm like, no, they are lesbians. That is it. So they relented on that, to their credit, and it did get to go through. So that was to their credit, is they did back off of that point. I also I got it on two fronts, because somebody else involved with the comic was like, if they're going to be a lesbian couple, then they should be having sex in the comic, and they should be making out in the comic, and we should really, play up the fact that it has a lesbian couple in it and really use that. We should really show that they're making out and, make the comic really hot and steamy. And I was like, no, this isn't about exploiting a lesbian couple. It's about representing a lesbian couple as the main characters in a modernization of an old-timey 1920s story. This isn't a porn comic. This isn't a comic with two quote-unquote best friends, just kind of hanging out with each other, okay? So, yeah, I think that in my personal estimation, I think I played the middle of the line pretty good there. It's not exploitative, and it's not shying away from the topic. So, I give myself a little pat on the back. I don't know. But then again, why take my word for it when you can read it yourself? That's right. If you check the description below this video, I have a link in that description to a PDF copy of the book. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Slimebeast, are you supposed to be linking a copy of the book if it was published through Viper Comics? Well, you know what? I think also Viper Comics should have paid me. It's been 13 fucking years. Lucky 13, since this was quote-unquote published, by which I mean all the copies were shit and it couldn't be sold. And we made nothing, and we're giving nothing for all of our troubles. So, why not? Link in the description below. Go and read it yourself. Written by me. Artwork by My Dying Rose. Colors by Sal Nieto, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the lettering, I lettered the entire fucking book. All of the lettering you see on screen, I fucking did that shit. So if it's cringe, you know who did it. If there are times when it looks really cool, I'll take credit for that. Whatever. Don't forget to check out Nosferatu in the description below, and also several years ago I changed the cover. By the way, this also includes several extra images at the end, including a faux website layout of the Suicide Girls type website, some general drawings of the characters, and also character sketches from when the artist was designing the characters and deciding what they should look like. Interesting. God, I bet you didn't think when you started playing this video that you would find out Slimebeast was woke in 2010 before everybody else was, huh? Like, I mean, a fucking male boss abusing his position of power to make his, subordinates feel uncomfortable, and gender swapping characters like people complain about in Hollywood now, and fucking, I bet you didn't expect to find out that Slimebeast was progressive way before 2016 when everything hit the fan. Just wait till you hear about Love Monster, the comic that's pretty much about nice guy syndrome.